welcome to another episode of Jets Mailbag. I'm your host, Jeane Coakley, and I am joined by my co-host for this and every episode of the show, the one, the only, Connor Hughes. Connor, we're here at Jets. We had our lunch. It's nice out. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'll be honest that I didn't necessarily think we'd be sitting here not talking about a team with a win at this point in the season, but that is the case. So let's do it.
All right, well, 7 weeks in, again, still looking for their first win. Clearly on a road to nowhere at the quarterback position. So how about we talk about it, Connor? Sounds like a plan?
Let's do it.
So we're going to start off with a double header. I'm going to read these two back to back, and let me tell you are going to love these questions, Connor. These are just for you. First one comes from Patricia Rodriguez. Here's a question. Why not play Brady Cook, and let's see what he's got? The next one comes from Kip. Any chance Brady Cook gets some run this season? Just feels like it's a total loss and nothing to look forward to at the QB position. In honor of Brady Cook, Connor, it's all you.
Yeah, I want to make sure that this isn't like Brady Cook's mom asking these questions, but you guys got to remember that it's always the unknown that every fan fixates on. It's why people wanted to see Matt Sims way back when, and they wanted to see Bryce Petty way back when, and you want to see Christian Hackenberg way back when. The fact is that Cook is an undrafted free agent for a reason who wasn't particularly effective or impressive during the Jets training camp practices, OTAs, minicamp, preseason. In fact, we ended Jets camp looking at each other saying, maybe they do keep Martinez instead of Cook. Like there was no surefire, no doubt this guy is the Jets QB3 at any point in time. But I will say that we are steamrolling towards a point where you do see Cook at some point. Now, I don't think it's going to be soon, barring injury. I don't think it should be soon because I think when he goes out there, pretty much kicking on the season. But the Jets are going to draft a quarterback in the first round next year. And it could be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. It's probably going to be a top 3 pick in the draft. It's almost assuredly going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. You want to make sure that you have evaluations complete on every potential quarterbacking option that you do in-house before you make that selection. So Cook right now is not ready. I don't think Cook will ever be ready. I don't think Cook is ever going to be a legitimate starting quarterback in this NFL based off what we've seen so early on. But you will give him a shot here at some point this year to be able to say, okay, we've seen him play. We've seen him in action. All right, now let's go get our guy, whoever that guy ends up being in the draft.
All right, let's stick with the quarterback position because obviously we're going to be talking about that a lot in this show. Next question comes from, ready? I like this, at Papa Squat, ET3QP. How about sending a 5 to Cleveland for Shedeur Sanders?
God, we are in dark times. Look, the Jets had an opportunity to draft Shedeur Sanders with a 5th-round pick or any other selection in the NFL draft, and they did not do that. And among the reasons why they did not choose to select Shedeur Sanders, and so many other people did not choose to select Shedeur Sanders, there is that because there's a lot that comes with Shedeur Sanders. That's just a fact. You know, there's attention with him. There's
the
news
last
with
thing
him,
the Jets need right now.
And there's also concerns with his play style. You know, he holds the ball forever. He takes a lot of hits. He has to be in a pro style offense with good situations around him. He likes to drift back when the pressure comes in, which leads to more negative plays. I get there's interest and intrigue there with him because of his last name and what he did at Colorado, but he was probably a guy that fell in the draft for a reason, and he turned off a lot of people during the pre-draft process. He really, really did. And I don't necessarily know if New York City and the attention that comes with playing in New York City and the attention that comes with being the Jets quarterback is something that the Jets want to involve themselves in. And honestly, Jeane, I take you back to something that Aaron Glenn told us when he discussed what he was looking for in a quarterback. And it goes back to stuff that Bill Parcells felt. He doesn't want his quarterback to be a celebrity. He doesn't. He doesn't want. It's one of the reasons why they decided to move on from Aaron Rodgers. It's one of the reasons why they won't get involved in themselves where the quarterback, the 1, is bigger than the 52. With Shedeur, there is a celebrity that comes with him. With Shedeur, there is a 1 and then the 52 that comes with him, justified or not. It's just not a match made in heaven for the Jets in any way, shape, or form. That's why they avoided him in the NFL draft and weren't going to take him in the NFL draft. And that's why I don't see them trading anything for the Browns to get him right now.
All right, moving on from quarterback questions for now, for the moment. This comes from Zolson. How should we react if/when Ulbrich, Saleh, and Bowles all make the playoffs?
Well, here's the thing: is I genuinely had you guys know this. I had a very good relationship with Jeff Ulbrich. I had a very good relationship with Robert Saleh. I wish those guys the best, and seeing them have
And
success.
Bowles is awesome. Bowles is one of the greatest guys ever too. So.
Well, this is what I thought was great too, but this is kind of what I'm getting to is that Jeff was never going to be back here as this team's head coach. That wasn't going to happen. Robert Saleh and honestly, shout out Jeff because he's having an unbelievable season right now with that Falcons defense. He has them playing some of the best football on the defensive side of the ball of any team in the NFL. I know they had a hiccup this past week, but they've been playing consistently really, really, really good football in Atlanta. And Robert Saleh has been dealt injury after injury after injury by the 49ers, losing Bosa, losing Warren, or Warner, I'm sorry, Fred Warner. And he still has them playing really good football. So kudos to them. But like Saleh's doing it as a defensive coordinator. Jeff Ulbrich's doing it as a defensive coordinator. Those two guys are coordinators. They're not head coaches right now. Todd Bowles is the one where you go, damn, because the Buccaneers are playing, again, I know they had a hiccup as well against the Lions, but they're playing really, really, really good football. And it seems like Todd has found quality offensive coordinator after quality offensive coordinator since he's been down there in Tampa. And he's got the franchise quarterback now in Baker Mayfield. And he's taking a team, and he's going to be taking a team into the playoffs with Super Bowl aspirations. And you just wonder if he was paired with somebody a little bit more effective and efficient than Mike McCagnon, would he have had more success or similar success here with the Jets? Now, Todd was not without his warts. I think his biggest criticism that you can make of him is that he was never able to get the offensive coordinator and the quarterback right. And some of that's on him. I think Chan Gailey did work for a brief time, but then when it blew up in 2016 and the Jets were just a catastrophic failure, they moved on from Chan Gailey, and then it was John Morton. Him. Yeah, John Morton I thought was actually a pretty decent replacement for Todd Bowles and a good hire for Todd Bowles. Now you see Morton having a lot of success in Detroit, but then the Jets moved on from him for Jeremy Bates, and that was a Heimerdinger move, but still they moved on from him, and now they had Jeremy Bates. Jeremy Bates was a disaster, and then eventually, obviously, Todd Bowles gets fired, but it's a tough one, Janae, but that's the one that I think Jet fans can be like rolling their eyes at as Sam Darnold's lighting it up in Seattle and Todd's building the Super Bowl contender in Tampa. Those are the ones where you're like, that was our head coach, that was our quarterback, and they're both gone. Saleh and Ulbrich, congratulations to them for the success they're having, but it's very different as a coordinator.
Yeah. All right. Oh, shocking. We're going back to the quarterback question, Connor.
There we go. Let's go.
BTAS Reunion asked, what about the Jets going Cousins or Brissett next year at QB and drafting a developmental quarterback?
Well, a lot of these quarterbacks are developmental. There isn't a surefire. There isn't an Andrew Luck. There isn't a Trevor Lawrence. There isn't a guy right now in this year's class that you look at and say he should start from day one, no doubt. A lot of these guys are probably going to need a little bit of time. I'm not saying sit an entire year like the Vikings did with J.J. McCarthy, although they probably weren't going to have him sit a whole year if he didn't suffer that injury. But the original plan was Sam Darnold was going to start that season, or like the Giants this year, where Russell Wilson, the plan was to start him and play him all this year. I don't see the player that is maybe this changes, but I don't see the Jaden Daniels. I don't see the quarterback that's like, this guy's just ready. And the big reason why Jaden Daniels had the success right off the bat was he played so much college ball and then was able to come in with a wealth of experience that some of these other guys don't have. Kirk Cousins is an interesting name. The problem with Kirk is this a situation he would want to get himself involved in? Because he went to the Falcons assuming he was going to be their starting quarterback. He was blindsided by them drafting Michael Penix, even more blindsided when they ended up benching Kirk Cousins off of the ruptured Achilles and then going to Penix when they did, and he's never gotten his job back. Plus, by the time he's a free agent at the end of this year, he won't have played in a year and a half. So I do think the best case scenario for the Jets is you pair a rookie with a veteran. I'm just not totally sure who that veteran is going to be. And I honestly wouldn't totally rule out that player being Tyrod Taylor. He's respected. The problem with Taylor is you just have the injury concerns, which are popping up left, right, and sideways right now for the Jets.
All right. Well, continuing on this same road, Sebastian Williams wrote, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you trust this current regime to develop a rookie quarterback, assuming they draft one in 2026?
So like this is like the super, super fascinating question. And we talked about it on Jets Final Drive, Zach and I did. And it's the reason why it's so interesting is where we got on this topic was actually by a question of do the Jets regret not drafting Jackson Dart? Because Jackson Dart does very much look like a franchise quarterback. But the Giants he's doing, I think there are physical limitations there with him, absolutely. But there's something about him, this moxie, this attitude, this confidence that you just see that he might be a guy that the Giants, maybe he's not a top 3, top 5 quarterback, but it really does look like this is a guy who's going to win a lot of football games for New York over the next 10 to 15 years. And he was there for the Jets to draft. He was there for the Jets to potentially trade up a draft, and they didn't. Where I give the Jets slack for not selecting Dart, which also leads into the question you just asked me, is that the entire Giants organization wasn't in love with Jackson Dart. There's a clip that the Giants themselves released from their own in-house media of their draft war room. And it's Joe Schoen, the Giants general manager, sitting there talking to Brian Daboll. And he says, if you are right, no, paraphrasing slightly, but if you are right and the you is not paraphrased, no one's going to care about the 3rd round pick. Meaning for the Giants to go back into the 1st round, they're going to have to give up a 3rd round pick. No one's going to care about that if you're right. When they're talking again about making the selection of Jackson Dart, it is if he passed all of your tests. It's Joe Schoen basically saying to Brian Daboll, you believe this guy's a franchise quarterback. If you're right, no one's going to give a crap what we gave up. No one's going to talk about the compensation because he passed in. Yeah, there's other quarterbacks out there. Shedeur Sanders was available, Dylan Gale, but they didn't pass your tests like Dart did. I can't stress this enough. The reason why Jackson Dart is a quarterback for the Giants is because Brian Daboll stood on his head on a table and screamed and yelled that we need to draft this guy. This was somebody that Brian Daboll evaluated and determined was the best quarterback in this year's class, and he wanted him on the Giants roster. For you to find quarterbacks, you need to have the person in the building to identify that talent, like the Giants did with Brian Daboll to go get Jackson Dart. I don't necessarily know yet if that person is in the Jets building. I don't know. Darren Muji was with the Broncos when they selected Bo Nix, but Bo Nix, I haven't been wildly impressed with him this year. Even after that wild even after that wild comeback against the Giants, that was more the Giants' defense just completely whatting their pants than it was Bo Nix being this unbelievable weapon as a quarterback. I don't know if that's Muji to evaluate the quarterback. I don't know if that's Aaron Glenn because he didn't do it in New Orleans. They had Drew Brees already. He didn't do that in Detroit. They got a veteran in Jared Goff. It's a very valid question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to it because we haven't seen anybody within the Jets do it yet where they've evaluated and identified a quarterback. But that is the benefit of when you have a quote-unquote quarterback guru, which Brian Daboll, justified or not, has the reputation as, is that sometimes you can, as a coach, identify a player where you're like, this guy works, this guy does things that other people don't see. You don't see some of this stuff on film. You don't see this just by watching his highlight film. You can talk to him and glean things from him that you couldn't necessarily do it otherwise. And it's one of the reasons why, if you remember the year before, Brian Daboll wasn't a Caleb Williams guy. Brian Daboll was a Jaden Daniels guy. He wanted Jaden Daniels. That's who Brian Daboll wanted. This year, he wanted Jackson Dart. At least the last 2 years, he's 2 for 2.
All right. Well, he definitely is a big fan of his. John Stern writes, considering the documented lack of a QB1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and poor depth at linebacker, edge, and safety, Muji is deserving of criticism for poor roster construction. But can a case be made that his plan was to save money and draft capital until year 2 so he could better assess his needs? Wow, did you get all that?
Here's what I'll say. And hey, look, Aaron Glenn is the one who has complete and total control. This isn't like when Mike Maccagnan was the boss of Todd Bowles, or Mike. I'm sorry, when Mike Maccagnan and Todd Bowles worked as equals, and they both worked, and then they both reported to ownership. This isn't like when Robert Saleh worked underneath Joe Douglas, and Robert Saleh reported to Joe Douglas, and Joe Douglas reported to ownership. This is Glenn is the guy. Glenn is the one who has complete and total control and final say on matters. That's the case, and that's fine. The coaches sometimes get that, and the Jets were willing to give this to Aaron Glenn. What I struggle with is that the Jets looked at this roster and saw pieces like Jermaine and like Brees and Garrett and Sauce and so many other players on this roster who are good to better to really good football players, to just then decide like, oh, we're going to punt on this year. If you were going to punt on this year, you would have traded a bunch of guys in the offseason who had immensely more value then than they do now. I just don't see that. My biggest concern with the Jets, and you can say this is a Muji thing, you can say this is an Aaron Glenn thing, is that when you go back to before free agency began and before the draft, and we've talked about this and argued about this, Jeane, is that if you gave me the 5 biggest concerns I had with the Jets, they are still the 5 biggest concerns right now because they went completely unaddressed. They did not go out there and get a wide receiver to replace Davante Adams once Davante Adams went away. I give them leniency on the quarterback position. Justin Fields didn't work, but when you were moving on from Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers was never coming back here after he took shots at the owner's kid, the best other option to take a chance on a wild card or a gamble, because Sam wasn't coming back here either, was Justin Fields. Completely and totally fine with the Jets taking a dice roll on that one. But the secondary concerns at safety and cornerback too, because I think Brandon Stevens is probably going to regress back to the mean once they start playing better competition than they have the last couple of weeks. And some of the concerns on the depth on some of the concerns on the depth of the offensive line, the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 spot, these were all issues where we were like, hey, the Jets need to add this, and the Jets never did. And they tried some with their later day 3 picks, but they just look like complete and total whiffs. So I'm a little worried. It goes back to actually the previous question about, they have the people there to identify the quarterback, but there's some concerns there absolutely with the state of this team, and I think it's because the Jets just haven't addressed the holes that they have.
I actually really like this question. I feel like you and I have talked about this before. This comes from, I'm just going to say it, Chow Baby, maybe? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on hiring John Dorsey as head of football operations. He's a senior executive of personnel for Detroit, but a bump in position might lure him away.
So you hire Aaron Glenn to basically be like your football champ. He handpicks Darren Muji as the general manager, and now you're going to hire somebody and put that person above Glenn and above Muji. I agree with you. I love John Dorsey. I think that's a really interesting name. He's a great football mind. I think he worked wonders.
But even bring him in to just, I don't know.
Well, they already have one there because Chris Spielman is the role technically. Well, Dorsey, this person's talking about literally making Dorsey head of football operations, so he would be ahead of the general manager. It's tough to do that in season. You kind of have to make a move like that. I mean, if you want to bring him in as an advisor, that's one thing. But to hire him in that position, it's tough to have 2 people doing things one way for 1 year and then immediately be like, hey, now this guy who might have a different vision or whatever is now your boss. Like I don't think that works. It's very clear, Jeane, that this is Aaron Glenn's show, and the Jets are going to rise or they're going to fall because of Aaron Glenn. And if we learned anything when Woody Johnson spoke at the NFL's annual meeting, but the NFL's owner meeting in New York, it's that he puts the blame entirely for this team's 0-7 start on Justin Fields, justified or not. Is that Justin Fields is why the Jets are 0-7, not Aaron Glenn. And he still believes in Aaron Glenn, and he loves Aaron Glenn, and he thinks this is going to work with Aaron Glenn because he can see progress. I've covered coaches before and covered owners when they speak about coaches before, where you can tell there's trouble in paradise and things aren't necessarily going well, and you can see that there's trouble on the horizon. Woody Johnson, justified or not right now, is completely and totally in belief that they still got it right with Aaron Glenn, and I don't see that changing over the next 10 weeks or so. So at least for going into next year, this is still going to be Glenn's thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. All right, final question. It comes from Zach. This is like Zach. Oh. Not our Zach.
Okay, not Rosenblatt.
Not our Zach, yeah. A more X's and O's question. Why are we not running screen and bootlegs if the QB is having trouble holding it too long and the O-line has trouble with delayed blitzes?
I think that's like my biggest. So as far as like the quarterback not running, you saw in the opener and in week 2 and even in the Dolphin game, like the Jets wanted to run Justin Fields. They wanted to. I was told by somebody close to Fields that he was in a real bad spot after the Cowboy game. He had taken a beating. He was bruised. He was battered. He was not feeling very good. That he was. I left the conversation feeling like Fields is not in a position where he can be a
feel comfortable enough running.
Yeah. That basically Fields was going to be in a spot where if he ran, it was going to be out of break glass in case of emergency. Unfortunately, Fields is not a quarterback that could play within the pocket through a normal structure of an offense. That's why he's not running more. The screens, all that leads to the biggest criticism I have is that with this coaching staff, it almost feels like if the Jets don't line up in front of a team and they are more talented, that's like the only way the Jets are going to win games, is that they take the field and they go, we're more talented than you and we're going to out-talent you. And unfortunately, this roster is not more talented than a lot of people. We've seen offensive coordinators before, and it happens frequently, scheme and design and create ways to manufacture offensive success. It's the best offensive minds in the NFL do this, but that's what the Jets are searching for. That's what you're hoping you can find somewhere, is that you are undermanned. You are down Garrett Wilson. You are down Braylon Allen. There's issues right now with Breece Hall running the ball where it looks like he's just checked out or emotionally. I don't know what it is with Breece, but he doesn't look like the Breece we've seen in years and years past, or the last couple of years. Even last year was bad too, but he just doesn't look like a player who's super engaged right now. You still want to have someone on the sideline that you believe can out scheme the opposition on the other side, that you can out scheme the defensive coordinator and find ways to have success. And the Jets just aren't doing that right now. And maybe things will light up a bit after you have Tyrod Taylor in there as the starting quarterback. Maybe that will change, but it's been very underwhelming to basically see this offense deteriorate since the opener. They had 394 yards and 30-something points in that first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're averaging under 250 yards and under 15 points per game since. And it's just been, they have, if I'm not mistaken, it's 302 yards and 15 total points the last two games. Like it's been bad the last couple of weeks specifically, but it's just been disappointing to see, because you had so much hype with Tanner Engstrand in that opener. There was film provided on him, and ever since then, it's just been blop, 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 down.
All right, Connor, I didn't get any good questions
from
your family or today,
that's
so
fine.
No surprise.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, look good with the light and the mic.
The ring light, yeah, shout out.
Thank you to Jeff. Let's shout out Jeff.
Yeah, shout out Jeff Goldman. We are for hooking up with the light looks good. I like the mic on the thing, everything. It's making us look better than what I think I normally look like. So I might just have to carry this ring light around all the time. But it's definitely an added bonus here to the Jets Mailbag Show.
Yeah, so we appreciate you, Jeff. There we go. That's my final question. It's going to be fun next week, going on a bye. I don't know if we have the show or not, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, Jeane, that
Halloween.
game.
Are you dressing up? You dressing up for Halloween for our next show?
We are. We're going as the Frozen cast. So I'm
Will you dress
Kristoff.
up for the show then?
I'll do that. Yeah,
okay,
I come in my Kristoff costume. Okay. Yeah, 100%. Okay. I will say though, this game against the Bengals could be bad. So this is just a little added point, because there's so much talk right now with the Jets and the trade deadline and who they're going to trade and who they're going to move and all things like that. I think they're in a weird holding pattern right now. The Jets are, where going into this game against the Bengals, there's uncertainty with what direction the season's headed. Sure, looks like it's going in one spot, but if they beat the Bengals and old friend Joe Flacco, and then they come back out of the bye and they beat the Browns, well, now at 2-7, you're not making a playoff push, but I think the overall perception of the team changes slightly, where now you can look at them and say, hey, there's a path to competence. Maybe things did click with Aaron Glenn. Maybe the guys are fighting hard. And if that's the case, you don't want to go start trading away dudes that are going to help the team, because it just sends a terrible message to the locker room. If they lose to the Bengals, though, Jeane, and then they lose to the Browns, or even if before they even get to the Browns game, if they lose these next two and they're sitting 0-8, 0-9, there's a feeling around the NFL from talking to multiple people that the Jets could just choose to blow it up. And this could be get as much draft capital as you possibly can, move these players who I know they are fan favorites. I know Breece Hall is a fan favorite. I know that Will McDonald's a fan favorite. I know that Quinnen and Quincy Williams are fan favorites, but the Jets haven't won anything with these players. Move these guys for, in some cases, like Quinnen Williams, potentially a second-round pick or a second-round pick and then some, and start to get the assets together to truly rebuild this thing. And you have Garrett, you have Sauce, you have your guys like that, but aside from them, rebuild outside of that. And we're going to learn a lot, I think, with how the Jets play against the Bengals, which I personally don't think the game's going to go particularly well. And then against a Browns team that has a really, really good defense, where if they win these next two, maybe the Jets decide to hold on to some guys, but if they lose the next two, I think you could be looking at fire sale time with the Jets.
Going to be interesting. Well, all I know is that you're going to be dressed up as Kristoff next week for our show.
I will. That I will.
So I'm excited about that. All right. Maybe Brooke can make an appearance. I don't know. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this edition of Jets Mailbag. Like we said before, we will be with you every week of the Jets 2025 season to answer your questions. Submit your questions for next week's episode on my, Connor's, or SNY's Twitter/X account, or drop them in the YouTube comments below this episode. For Connor Hughes, I'm Jeane Coakley. We'll talk to you next week in costume. Something to look forward to.